Hi, I'm Steve Pond from TheWrap. We're here at our Toronto Film Festival studio, and I'm pleased to welcome M. Beth Davids, director of Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight. We know you as an actress. This is your first film as director. What made you want to tell this story?
I read and loved the book. So, I think I read the book maybe 10 years ago and fell in love with it. And as time went on, I kept thinking about the the idea of it as a film, and I thought it reflected so much of my own childhood, and I thought I really know how to tell this story. I didn't actually intend to direct it in the beginning. I wanted to play a part in it. I wrote the screenplay, and then I couldn't find a director, and my husband actually said, "Why don't you direct it?" Which was terrifying at first, but then I actually thought, I really know the story well. I know a rudimentary amount of things about cameras, and I think I'd be able to do it with a good cinematographer. And yeah, so I'm really happy I ended up doing it.
So this is a story about a little girl growing up in Zimbabwe, basically, as it's making the transition from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe, and as um, the whites who have controlled the country for so long are sort of losing their power. Now, you didn't grow up in Zimbabwe, but you did spend some time in South Africa as a child.
Yes, so I was actually born in the US, but my parents moved to South Africa in the 70s. Um, and it wasn't, South Africa didn't go through the War of Independence like Zimbabwe did. It was a much slower process in South Africa, but many, many similarities in terms of a racially segregated place, a violent place. Um, a lot of South Africans lived in Zimbabwe, a lot of Zimbabweans live in South Africa. We sort of culturally collide and overlap one another. And so there are just a lot of themes that were the same. So I felt like I knew how to tell the story.
Right. I mean, I also feel like there's sort of a rich history. I think back to John Borman's Hope and Glory, where it's a film about a traumatic time, but it's seen through the eyes of a child, which really changes a perspective on something. I mean, was that one of the things that appealed to you?
Yeah. So the book, the memoir, was not written. The memoir was written, by as a third person, her telling the story of her childhood. And I really struggled with the screenplay. I think that the hardest nut to crack was finding, because a 21-year memoir that spans someone's whole life, which episode am I telling? And to me, the child was the most intriguing aspect of it, and I felt like I finally cracked the code of telling the story when I switched it to her point of view, because then she could say anything. She could say what she really thought. She could say the outrageous things that other people maybe wouldn't say. And I thought also the more intriguing thing is what happens to a child when they're put in the middle of that kind of a climate, both a climate of conflict, of war, of a troubled home life. I think you get honesty out of children in a way that maybe adults don't have. And so I thought this is the way into the story.
Yeah, and it's also she can say outrageous things, but we know where they're coming from. We know that she's saying
What she's
things that
heard.
she's heard.
Right.
So it really is a way of getting across the mindset
Of the people at the
filtered through the
time.
child. Yeah.
That's the thing, because I thought if we are the third person, objective eye watching this happen, I feel like it would be so alienating to see horrible racist people behaving badly, that somehow a child who's in the middle of it, giving her version of things, skewed as they are, you understand where she's heard things. The things that she retells, she's heard from adults around her. And by the end, one hopes she's come to her own conclusions about what is real.
Yeah. So how hard was it to find that amazing young actress and to get that performance out of her?
Um, I had to look, and I think I started looking in the wrong place to begin with. That was part of it. Actors, little child actors were coming in. The problem is, kids get very set in their ways. They learn a line, they can't change the way that they learn a line. Or kids who've performed do it very performatively. And even my little Lexi would sometimes do that. So I wouldn't even give her the script the day before. I would change the lines and then just say this, say it as naturally as possible. So I think for me, the key was finding a kid who had the character and the face that this little girl needed to have, but also just was natural and wild and had not learned any bad, quote unquote, acting techniques. And so I could say the line like this, and she would just say it. if we did it more than 3 times, it would start to become set in a certain way. So then it was just like, we have to be super close with the camera, be ready, rehearse this with a body double, bring her in, let me throw the line at her, let her repeat it, and then we'll get what we need. Because overdoing it, over rehearsing, you lose the freshness of it. But she was a very special find.
Yeah. I mean, you're also playing a role in this film as her mother, and it's not a light part to be playing. I mean, this is a woman who is having a really hard time coping with what the changes that are going on in her country, and she's very troubled. And I would say you know, it's probably a tough role to take on, even if you're not also directing the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So the moving backwards, the reason I wanted to option the book and write the screenplay was because I wanted to play that part. I thought, this is a great, challenging part. I sort of hadn't worked for a while, raising my kids, and I thought, this is the sort of thing that I want to do. And then when I ended up directing it, for a moment, I was like, I don't know how to direct and be in this. So how am I going to be behind the camera, then step in front of the camera? And then I really couldn't find someone to play the part. I almost was ready, well, let me give up acting in it so I can direct it. And then I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do it all. So I don't love watching myself in it, because I would have loved a director to direct me so that I could have tried some different things. I just was flying by the seat of my pants and sort of doing what I could in the moment and pushing it as far as I needed to and fiddling around in the edit to find the performance. But I'm an actor who loves a director directing me. So, yeah, I wish I'd had a director that wasn't me.
Right. So do you envision doing more directing of movies maybe that you're not in?
For sure. I certainly wouldn't do both things at the same time again. I loved it, actually. I was happy every single day that I was making it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I don't think I would set myself up to do it again. I would love to direct again. Again, telling a story that I care about. I don't think I could ever just direct for the sake of directing. It's really hard. It's an all-encompassing thing. Everything sort of lives or dies on you, and so it's a massive responsibility. But I do love the ability to tell a story from beginning to end, and by being in the director's chair, you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a movie about a specific country at a specific time, but also the idea of turmoil in the world and how it affects, a family and a child is pretty universal.
Yeah.
It's not tied to, Rhodesia at this point.
No, and that was sort of the intention, because one doesn't need to tell a story about a time and place, whatever, 40 years ago, whenever it was. It's more, what does it resonate with in terms of what's happening in the world right now? It's hard to turn on the news and not see something devastating going on in some corner of the world. And strangely, not strangely, it's on repeat, right? But there are children in all the places where there's world conflict right now. What are children seeing? So that was it's specific to what they are seeing or they saw in South Africa or Southern Africa. But I feel like it's a universal thing that children are the victims that are caught within households in turmoil, countries in turmoil. And she's a plucky little girl, but, I just thought putting the lens from the child's point of view sort of highlights that there are lots of children in and amongst the conflicts in the world right now.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I mean, it's a very powerful film, and thanks for coming here and talking about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.